You seem more willing, interested, and I must say, maybe more conservative than I thought you were. Is that a fair assessment?
Not at all,
Okay.
because I am so not political you can't even believe.
We're going to have a look at a conversation slash debate between David Pakman and Dr. Phil.
Bro. This is titled Dr. Phil Destroyed Dave Pakman with Truth Bombs on His Own Show. Okay. This is one of the guys who comes into my chat. This is him. This is, not literally, but like pretty much. This is, he just called him Dave Pakman. You're literally, like, you should be able to get a lot of views off of something by putting their name in your title. Yet he put Dave instead of David. Dave Pakman. I've thought about this a lot. I would love to make an attempt at right-wing grifting. Just to troll, just to fuck around. I would love to try it sometime. I would love to just give it a shot. It just, you know what? Like the other day, do you guys remember? I had like maybe like 5 people in the shorts chat for like hours. And then I started fucking around, pretending to be conservative, pretending to vote for Trump. And there was a bunch of like people started piling up in chat. And I saw a bunch of people there. And I said, at one point, I just said, oh, I'm definitely voting for Trump. Out of nowhere. It was so out of context. I just threw it into the middle of a rant. It was so random, so out of nowhere. I was talking about Kyle Rittenhouse. And then just threw in like, oh, and I'm definitely voting for Trump. And then just kept on my sentence. There were people in chat who were like, hell yeah, I just subbed. I just hit the sub button, brother. Let's go. I was like, really? That's it? That's it? That's all I have to... I just have to say I'm voting for Trump and that's it? You're just gonna hit the sub button? I wish it was that easy with like the left. I wish it was that simple to where I could just, I'm voting Kamala, and they're like, hell yeah, subbing up, motherfucker, let's go. Like, I wish they were like that, but they're not. They require a lot more intellect, rhetoric, argumentation, research. You know, they have standards, unfortunately, and it's kind of bullshit. I'm not gonna lie, kind of bullshit, but. Yes, this guy right here, he's got 117,000 views on this, 22,000 subscribers. I bet you anything he is just completely retarded. And I would bet that Dave Pakman does not get destroyed with truth bombs. I'm willing to bet right now that Dr. Phil probably just sounds like an old boomer the entire time, and David Pakman is being patient, trying to have an engagement with Phil.
And this one cracked me up because David Pakman accuses Dr. Phil of being a conservative, like it's some kind of bad thing. And really, I don't think that Dr. Phil is either conservative nor Democrat. And Dr. Phil defends himself simply by referring to today's climate in America and how it relates to American families being affected. David Pakman then presumes himself to be the smartest man in the room, which is never
T-Fuel, thank you for the raid on kick. Let's go. We got you guys on the screen today, so you're in the chat.
the case, especially when Dr. Phil is in the house. And I'm not saying that Dr. Phil is the smartest guy, the end-all be-all of knowledge, but when it comes to his opinion versus David Pakman, I believe I would side with Dr. Phil 99 out of 100 times.
That's really stupid. That's just I don't like David Pakman. I don't like David Pakman, but he does have TDS. If TDS ever existed, if anybody ever had TDS, it is David Pakman. He is like the soy liberal who just makes shit up about Trump and will engage in all sorts of like theories about him and everything. But if Dr. Phil isn't political at all, then why would you listen to Dr. Phil over David Pakman, whose entire career is politics? That's stupid. I would listen to Dr. Phil on issues that have to do with like psychology or therapy or something like that, sure, but not politics.
This one was a fun watch for me, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it too. So let's go ahead and check it out.
Today we'll be speaking with Phil McGraw, also known as Dr. Phil, host of Dr. Phil Prime Time on Merritt Street Media, and author of the new book, We've Got Issues, How You Can Stand Strong for America's Soul and Sanity. You know, I'm very interested to speak to you today because in preparation for our interview, I've been watching some of the Fox News appearances, looking at the book, etc. I never really saw you as a guy who delved into political issues per se. You seem more willing, interested, and I must say, maybe more conservative than I thought you were. Is that a fair assessment?
Not at all.
Okay.
Because I am so not political, you can't even believe it. And I'll tell you,
I'm going to be a little bit picky here, but being conservative isn't really political in its essence. Being conservative is more about your values. You can literally have nothing to do with politics whatsoever, but you can be conservative. Being a Republican is a political party. It's a political affiliation. Whereas being conservative is more so saying this is like where my values come from. Today, we all use conservative as the same as Republican, crap like that. But I am a right-wing, postmodern, neo-Marxist, progressive left-winger. And so I'm going to have a bit more nuance within my labels versus other people who just put them all together and make them mean the same things.
why I know nothing about politics, and I know why you say that. It sounds like it.
Right.
I talk about these things as cultural issues from a psychological, psychosocial standpoint, how they affect families and people.
Yeah, that's all part of politics, correct? You are describing conservative values.
And they do overlap with some of the things that politicians talk about, but they talk about it from a political standpoint, funding standpoint, how they can get this bill or that bill through. Couldn't care less. But I am interested in those issues in terms of how they impact families in their day-to-day pursuit of life and peace and being able to raise their family in a healthy environment. So there's a lot of overlap, but I don't talk about it from a political standpoint because I frankly don't know enough about the politics of it all.
That's
I'm just willing to admit that. I'm just willing to admit it. I don't think a lot of other people know either. I'm just willing to admit it.
I don't want to make this like, famously there's this story of literary critics were talking about the symbolism in Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, and he would tell them, that's not at all what I meant. And so I don't want to make this where I tell you about how political all the stuff you say is, but the reason why I say it is a lot of the language in the book and when you talk about issues like immigration and culture and others, it seems as though it alludes to going back to the good old days, individual decisions in the style that many Republicans now talk about with regard to schooling and parenting, et cetera. But you're saying it's just not the case.
No, and that doesn't mean that there aren't politicians on both sides of the aisle that talk.
You do realize that people all over the world call right-wing Party's conservative. Yes, wait, but that is correct. That is a correct way of saying it. Is conservatism is right wing, whereas like here we would say like being liberal is like the values, right? You are liberal in your values, and then the party is the Democrat Party, whereas like yes, being conservative in your values is a thing, whereas we have the Republican Party. Just as like yes, you can be progressive in your values, and then you have, I don't know what, the Green Party or whatever, like there's and then you would say those are like right-wing values, or those are left-wing values. The Democrat Party is a left-wing party, but left-wing is not a Democrat thing. Democrat is a left-wing thing. Liberal is a left-wing thing, but left-wing is not a liberal thing, right? Like there's kind of like a hierarchy to these things, and Democrat would be at the bottom of that, saying you are left-wing, liberal is a left-wing value, and left-wing values, and liberal values lead to being a Democrat.
Talk about these issues, but if you really think about raising a family in America, whether it's now or 50 years ago or 20 years down the road, we still have to keep our eye on what I think are core issues in America. And I think the backbone of America is the family unit. I really think that if we have strong families, if we have strong family values, and I think that our families in America, as you've heard me say and read me say, are under attack. And I think some of those attacks are unintended consequences of technology, for example. But these are things that, whether politicians talked about them or not, if they tried to legislate about them or not, I would still be talking about.
So give some examples of that. What are some of the attacks facing families?
Well, I think about 08, 09, we had what I think has been the biggest change to human life since the Industrial Revolution. I think before the Industrial Revolution, we were a very agricultural civilization, right? People worked on the farms. We grew what we needed. But then we became mechanized, and I think back then we were 95% agricultural. Now we're 1% agricultural. Why? Because everything is so mechanized and people move to the cities and all. Well, the biggest thing that's happened since then, in my opinion, was the advent of the smartphone. The internet became so prolific. And I mean, think about it. We're walking around in 08, 09 with as much computing power in our hands, with smartphones, laptops, iPads, that we had when we did the moon shot. When we put a man on the moon, we didn't have as much computing power as we can hold in our hands as of 08, 09, and it changed everything. And people stopped being so involved with the reality of life and started getting involved in virtual life. And it's only gone more and more in that direction since that time. And also at that time, we started seeing the highest levels of anxiety, depression, and loneliness in young people since records were kept. And
I'm with you on this
changed.
one. I'm with you on this one. Jonathan Haidt has studied and written about this extensively. You and I are aligned on this one.
Dr. Phil's a little upset. He's like, dude, you interrupted me. I had like 10 more minutes of shit that I was going to say. What the hell?
What about the ones that fall under what you call the tyranny of the fringe? Because I don't think the smartphone example falls under that category, right?
No, that's why I say some of this is the unintended consequences of like technology. But then we've got some where we've got people that are just trying to change some of the core values in America, core values of family.
They just feel like changing it. They just, there's no rhyme or reason to it. They just want to change just because they want to change.
Trying to rewrite history. And we've got people that are coming in saying, well, we want to change history, we want to change what kids are being taught in history, we want to change biology, we want to change all of the things that we have for 100 years had empirical data to support.
But tell me more. I don't want to gloss over this. I really want to understand this. Changing history. Okay, what was the history that used to be taught that now has been changed by the tyranny of the fringe?
Well, pick an area. We can talk about biology, where we have always had two sexes.
But what about history? Just to pick history, not biology, because you said history, biology. What about history?
And that's one of the problems with progressives, right? Especially like...
Right? Am I right, dude? Well, he's asking questions, trying to understand what the hell Dr. Phil's rambling on about, dude. Why? Progressives always want to understand things. They always want to ask questions and get what you're saying, dude. Like, bro, just say MAGA 2024 and then just misspell everything afterwards and we'll all cheer you on. Like, that's all I need. That's all anybody wants. Just say MAGA 2024 and then just ramble on about a bunch of incoherent crap like you're a drunk homeless dude who doesn't know how to spell his own name. That's what I want.
Like David Pakman, he calls himself a progressive. He's going to go out there and, for the sake of progress, going to conveniently forget history and the biology that is involved in history. It's like, no, don't talk about biology.
You forgot about the biology that's involved in history, dude. Man, I can't believe Dave forgot about the biology that's involved in history. Wow. Dave?
Let's talk about history. It's like, hold up there, bud. We've known since the creation of mankind that there's only two sexes. But now, for the sake of progress, all these progressives and Democrats and everybody over there, they want to come at you and say that there's actually 900 different sexes or whatever it is. I don't know.
Yeah, dude, you know how they're all saying there's a lot of sexes, It's, first they were telling us there's a bunch of genders. Now they're saying there's a bunch of sexes too. What? They're just making up new stuff all the time. They're always saying this. Who says this? Whoever. Have you not been watching Libs of TikTok? Come on. They're all saying it. They all say this stuff all the time.
I don't even know. I lost track, and I don't even care to keep count. But Dr. Phil leads with this one example, and David Pakman can't handle what he's about to hear, so he cuts him off and says, no, talk about actual history. And it's like Dr. Phil's pause right there says it all. It's like one of those times where a person thinks like a million words in 1 second. And I just wish I could know what Dr. Phil was thinking right there, because I have a feeling he realized that David Pakman is a complete moron.
America started going in the wrong direction with homosexuals in high positions in government. That's what I'm saying. Well, Jewish homosexuals was probably the worst part of it. Am I right?
And began to wonder why he's even having this interview.
Well, there's a lot of history to biology, and you would be missing a big point to pretend that there's not historical biology. But if you want to talk about history, we can, not in biology, but just talk about the history of mankind.
Yeah.
We've got areas.
Dude, this is so dumb. So, yeah, he's acting like he was going to go on about history and biology, blah, blah, blah. Nobody's disagreeing that there's two sexes. Everybody knows there's two sexes, okay? Like, I don't know where this is that people are disagreeing with this. Everybody knows there's two sexes. Outside of that, okay, sure, there's some people, so when he says the tyranny of the fringe, there is a very, 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 very tiny group of people who say that there's a bunch of genders, okay? Those people are fucking wild. Nobody really says that crap. Nobody really believes that. It's not a popular opinion. There's not a bunch of Democrats running around talking about all the different genders that there are. That's not a thing. But literally nobody says that there's more than 2 sexes. That is not a thing that's happening. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that there's more than 2 sexes. But this is already the problem, is we have people who don't even know what they're talking about it as though they know. It's insane.
Is where they don't want to talk about slavery. We had one a group of people that wanted to start describing slavery in history books as involuntary relocation.
Changing the name doesn't mean that you're not talking about it anymore. If you're saying that they wanted to change the name to involuntary relocation, that doesn't mean that it's no longer slavery. First off, because what matters is the definition of the word and what's being communicated. If all of a sudden we start calling blue green and green blue, like, we didn't lose the colors didn't disappear, we just referred to them as different words. It doesn't change anything except for the motion our mouths make when we say it, or the way that we write it down. That's it. That's the only change. Nothing else. You still have it. But I thought that he was gonna go to removing statues or something like that, which removing statues doesn't get rid of this stuff in our history, right? I don't learn history from going to the park and looking at the statues. I learned history in school. I learned history by reading about history. I never learned history by looking at a statue and being like, that's what happened. Wow. I've never done that in my entire life. I've never, in my whole entire life, looked at a statue and been like, now I get slavery. Now I get it. Now I understand it. Thank goodness that there was that concrete right there. Or you can go to a museum, right? Even those statues will normally get relocated, involuntary relocation, to a museum. That's normally where they go. Just into museums, or they just tear them down and throw them away, because the museum's already full up on slavery statues. But there's no point. I don't know who's saying forget about history. I know that there's some people who are trying to take books out of schools and wanting to get rid of books and doing book burnings and stuff like that. But that's not the left. That is the Republicans. So not really sure where he's going with this one.
Right.
This was not involuntary relocation. This was slavery. And we've got people that are wanting to rename schools because people that were doing what were the mores and folkways of the times now would clearly be doing things against the law, certainly against mores and folkways, because they were slave owners at the time, are saying, well, now we have to tear down these statues, we have to rename these schools, and we don't want to teach about them.
Okay, I don't agree with tearing down any statue of anybody who ever owned a slave just because they owned a slave. I don't agree with renaming anything that ever had someone who owned a slave, the Lincoln, I don't think owned slaves, but the Lincoln Memorial School wants to change the name because Lincoln owned slaves. They didn't name it the Lincoln Memorial School because of anything having to do with slaves, right? They named it that because he was a president. So it doesn't matter that he owned slaves. That's not why they named it that. The reason for why they name it something, or the reason for why they put the statue up, that's what matters. So when a statue is put up of somebody because they were a Confederate soldier, it makes sense that we would get rid of the statues of rebels. It makes sense that we would get rid of statues of traitors. It makes sense that we would not keep the statues of people who were fighting to keep slavery. That makes sense to me. Okay? That's what the statue is there for. It is there to commemorate them fighting for slavery and fighting against the United States as rebels, as traitors. Yeah, I don't want to keep those. Thank you. I'm good. We can put those somewhere else. But if it's somebody who's like a great scientist and we put up a statue for all of the great science that they did, and then we find out that they owned slaves, I don't think that we should take that statue down just because they owned slaves. That's a little ridiculous. That they're not there. We're not celebrating them owning slaves. We're celebrating their science achievements. And that is what a statue is. A statue is celebrating somebody. That's what they are. They are celebrating people. We don't make statues of Hitler, but we do write things about Hitler. We do say things about Hitler. We'll put them in museums. We'll put them in books and stuff like that. But we don't build statues of them. We do not erect statues of Hitler. Why? Because statues are a commemoration, a celebration, and we do not want to commemorate Hitler.
We have to learn from our mistakes as a society. We can't pretend those things didn't happen. They did happen. They were dark and ugly times in American history. We don't want to pretend those things weren't there.
So let me see if I understand,
crazy.
because there's a bunch of stuff. So if I hear you correctly, you're not in agreement with those who want to minimize the tragedy and brutality of slavery, but you also want to keep the school names. If a school is named after a slave owner, you're also okay with that because it will remind us and we will learn from it. Am I understanding that correctly?
Good catch.
I think you're oversimplifying what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you're
oversimplifying it, I thought he was going to say you're overcomplicating it, but he said oversimplifying instead. Okay.
wanting to change American history to pretend that these people did not exist, and you want to measure them by today's yardstick rather than the yardstick at the time, that's what is referred to as presentism.
I agree that it is weird to judge someone based on morals today instead of their morals of then. But I also know that if you are a person who goes to school and you're a black kid going to the Robert E. Lee school every single day, that could probably feel a little fucking weird. I can understand how that would feel odd. And if they have like big old posters of him in his red coat, posed with a feather coming out of his hat, looking all majestic and everything, it's like, yeah, I could understand how that could feel a little weird. I could understand if a Jewish kid was going to a school named the Hitler, commemoration school or the Hitler Memorial School. I could understand why a Jewish person might feel a little weird walking in, looking at majestic pictures of Hitler standing there in his beautiful Nazi uniform. I think I can get that.
And that's like saying, okay, you're going to drive through a neighborhood and the speed limit is 20. And you drive through that neighborhood doing 20, and then they come along and say, you know what, we're going to change the speed limit to 10, and we're going to give you a ticket for speeding when the speed limit was 20. It's now 10, but you weren't speeding when you were doing 20, but now it's 10. We're going to give you a retroactive ticket for doing what was acceptable at the time. That's called presentism. We're going to take what was done back at the time, pull it up into the current time, and condemn you for not knowing what was going to be acceptable 200 years later than when you did it. And I think that is really narcissistic and arrogant and rewriting history instead of letting people learn from the mistakes that were made in America and that we need to learn from so we don't make those mistakes again. Because some of those people also did some really good things at the time. We don't need to endorse everything they did, but we need to acknowledge the good and the bad.
And that right there, I believe, is something that America has dominated on the world.
Bro, this guy scares the fuck out of me every time he pops up. I'm like, oh, fuck, where did he come from, dude? What the hell? He just pops up out of nowhere. It's like, dude, chill. Like, fade in or something, dude. Slow, like, have a transition or something. I forget that you're even there every single time, and then all of a sudden you just pop up wearing a very weird hat with your big old beard. It's a little jarring. You gotta...
scale as it relates to learning from your mistakes and moving forward for the betterment of the people. A lot of the worst parts of our history are just that, history. They're not implemented in today's society at all, although there are a lot of people out there that will try to claim systemic this or systemic that, when the reality is there's maybe bad individuals, but the system is not designed anymore, at least in my opinion, to hold people back or prevent them from chasing and achieving their own American dream.
This is so irrelevant. This is what I'm talking about when I say that, like, people are talking about issues that they don't understand as though they understand them. When he says systemic issues, and then in that same take says there may be bad individuals. What do individuals have to do with a fucking system, dude? It's the system that they're saying is bad. The system is bad. There is a bad system, not individuals. It doesn't matter if there are bad individuals. It's a system that exists. Individuals that are bad are going to be totally irrelevant to a system that exists. This is just somebody talking about, like, systemic racism as though he thinks systemic racism is a bunch of bad people. It's not just a couple individuals. No, it's systemic when it gets to a lot of individuals. Now it's systemic. It's like, that's not systemic. That's not how that works. I mean,
it comes to cancel culture, something you've also written and spoken about. What do you think is the prototypical or emblematic example of someone who was unfairly canceled over the last few years?
Well, I think the idea of cancel culture is more than one person, and I'm not going to speak specifically about one person. What I'm going to say is you've got people that want their speech instead of free speech. And so they will come in and talk about in a university certain things that can't be shared, can't be talked about. We've got universities that have put out language that they highly recommend their professors to not use. One of them that jumps out at me from the University of California is they were encouraged to no longer say America is the land of opportunity, or the job should go to the most qualified person. They were saying you can't say those things anymore because they are considered to be oppressive. And if you have university faculty, even tenured faculty, that talk about those things or ask their students to take positions that are contrary to what they believe, what the students believe, they get grieved against, they get suspended, they get disciplined, and in a sense canceled at that point.
That's interesting. Let me weigh in on that a little bit, because that's very interesting. In preparation for the interview, I looked at the academic setting, because a lot of times when we talk about cancellation, we talk about, a comedian who said or did something, and then for a while they didn't have shows or something like that, Louis C.K., for example, et cetera. I looked for the revocation of tenure for professors in a lot of these schools that you talk about or allude to. And really, it seems that when tenure is being stripped, it's for real wrongdoing. Plagiarism is uncovered, sexual harassment of students, etc. I really struggle to find evidence in a country of 330 million people of tenure being stripped just because of using the wrong language. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't wacky memos that go out, or I'm with you that this stuff exists anecdotally. But if we think about what is happening big picture, I actually struggle to really find examples of this as an epidemic. Tell me where I may be missing something.
Well, I don't know what you mean by epidemic.
Well, that it's happening, that
What do you mean you don't know what he means? Like, he means that it's a widespread issue. What are you talking about? Show me one student who was canceled for saying simply, America is the land of opportunity. You haven't been paying attention to the news, Freddie, is what that is. You've been paying too much attention to mainstream media, because they're not going to cover it. They're not going to tell you when it happens. That's the problem. You need to do some searches. And I don't mean on Google, I mean on DuckDuckGo. Do your own research, Freddie. Go to schools and ask people if it's happened. And they'll all say yes. Everybody will say, yes, I personally have been canceled for saying it. 100% of the students will say yes.
Professors are being stripped of tenure, not for serious violations of their, like I said, sexual harassment, plagiarism, being involved in criminality, but just because they said something that is maybe not politically correct. I'm just not seeing that tenure is being stripped from professors for that. Do you have any examples of professors that have lost tenure in that way?
So many.
I do, and I'll provide it to you. How's that? I'll get you a list and send it to you.
Yeah.
That would be. I would
totally
love to
coming.
do that, because if that is happening, I want to expose that, and I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
A couple other things that I wanted to ask you about. When it comes to
dude, he is not having it right now. He's like, dude, I thought I was here to give a lecture. Who is this kid who keeps talking? Who is this child who keeps interrupting me? What is this? Why does he get to talk? So his face goes from this very quickly.
Do that, because if that is happening, I want to expose that, and I want to talk about that. Couple other things that I wanted to ask you about. When it comes to what you see happening in the political space right now, approaching it from a cultural perspective, as you say that you do you agree that a decline in religiosity is a problem in the United States, or is that not a concern to you?
It is a concern to me. I think we've seen church membership drop below the 50% mark for the first time in our country's history. And I think that that's a problem for a variety of reasons. And one of them being that that's one of the times that families tend to spend quality time together. It's time that they put their phones down. It's time that they usually got together and would go do something as a unit and focus on values that were constructive to the family. There was often meditation time involved. There was often discussions about what was discussed in church that day. They often had Sunday dinner together afterwards and spent quality time like they did no other time during the day. And I think it also is a product of our lessened birth rate, which has dropped because a lot of people join church when they have children because they want their child to be baptized or christened or whatever. And the fact that we've seen our birth rate drop to around 1.6 from 2.1, which is necessary to sustain
Yes.
our infrastructure right now, is a problem. And it seems that that's one of the main reasons that church membership has dropped off. There's fewer kids to go get baptized, christened, or whatever, so people have less reason to go to church, and that's a byproduct of the lesser birth rate.
Yeah, there are a lot of problems with Christianity dying out and religiosity dying out within America. One of the major ones is that community is really an important thing for humans. It is something that we need. We need to feel close to the people around us. We want to know them. We need to feel as though we are a community where you actually know the people around you and you actually have conversations with them. You're able to meet them. You know your neighbors. You feel safer. You feel like you trust the people a lot more. And it's just more conducive to just more trustworthy communities. And one of the places that communities met most often was in churches. Every single Sunday, everybody comes together and they all hang out for a couple of hours and then go home, eat dinner or whatever. Maybe go back Sunday night as well, maybe go back Wednesday night. But currently, we just don't have a whole lot of good community gatherings where you actually meet other people, where you actually talk to other people. And it is harder for people to meet others, which is one of the reasons for the rising rate in incels as well, is that, yes, there's just a lot more people. All of a sudden, Botrix is in the shorts chat. I don't know what happened. This is strange. I don't know what's going on with this bot. But anyways, it's just that there are a lot of benefits to church existing and community gatherings existing. Currently, I don't know any of the people who live around me. I don't know any of them. I don't know the person to my right. I don't know the person to my left. I don't know the person across the street. I don't know any of them. I don't know anybody in my neighborhood. I don't know any of these people. When I grew up, I do know that I knew everybody around us. I knew everybody on our entire block and the block next to it. I know that every time we moved from one house to another when I was younger, everybody would show up with like casseroles and pies and stuff like that to welcome us to the neighborhood and introduce themselves, let us know who they were. But now, like, you needed to do that because you needed to have an outlet. You needed to be able to know people. You need to be able to find a way to have friends, and the easiest people to hang out with are going to be the people around you, and you want to be able to go over and ask for some sugar or something like that. Well, you don't need to go and ask your neighbor for sugar anymore. You can just pull out your phone and order it on DoorDash, and they'll show up with some sugar real quick. Most of the social interactions are taking place online now. Most of the communities take place online now. So there are a lot of aspects of community that we've been losing more and more over time, especially as technology gets more and more advanced. And these are things that we are losing from the human experience, some of the more essential aspects of the human experience, where we're not able to, young guys aren't meeting girls as easily, and obviously they still have school, so they're still getting a lot of that stuff there, but meeting girls outside of school where you're actually able to socialize a bit more and able to feel like you know them a little bit more, those things are a bit harder without community events existing, and church was just a really good weekly community event that you went to that was an easy way for people to meet each other. So I do agree with him to some extent, obviously, that religiosity dying down is making the birth rate drop. It's one of the reasons that the birth rates dropped, and it's also something that causes problems with us being able to experience community building.
What do you make of the correlation, anyway, that as church attendance has declined, which you rightly point out, the rate of violent crime and murder in the United States has also been declining? Do you think there's anything because a lot of times the claim is made that as you remove God, whether it's from school or whatever, bad things happen, crime rates go up, etc. But we continue to see violent crime rates.
It's an insanely leading question. This is there's an odd direction to go.
Decline in the United.
I wonder if he said something about this in one of his books or something that which is why he's going in this direction.
United States correlating with decreased church attendance. What do you make of that?
You know what? We can all tell that Dr. Phil is over your dumbass questions there, so I'll answer that question for him. The reason why crime is down is because none of the DAs in the most heavily populated blue Democrat-ran cities are willing to prosecute. They give them a slap.
That doesn't make crime go down. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That does not mean crime goes down. That's not crime going down, homie. That is sheesh. That is wild that he thinks that's an answer. I can't even imagine thinking that this is a fucking answer right here. That somebody calling the police and saying, I want to report a crime, that is a crime happening. That is a crime. That crime happened. We have a report. We now know a crime happened. That's a crime. What happens afterwards with the idea that they're letting them out, they're not prosecuting them, that would make you believe the crime would go up, not down. That would make it go up, right? All of the criminals are not being locked up. All of the criminals are not being held. They're not being punished. They're able to get away with everything scot-free. So crime would then go up if that's the case. This is ridiculous. He's gonna kill me. He's gonna kill me. This is one of the dumbest points I've ever heard. They don't record the crimes. Then on paper, it looks like crime is down. Can you show me where that's happening, GT? I would love to see that. Who is not recording crimes? Who is this that's doing that? Who's refusing to record crimes? Because that would be a pretty massive failure on the 911 operators if they're not recording crimes. And then the police obviously are going to follow up on this as well. So I would love to see where police are just never showing up for crimes that are being reported. But anyways, GT, your answer is still massively different from this guy's.
Slap on the wrist and put people back on the streets the next day, the very same day that they're arrested for doing the crime. We read the articles, we see the stories over and over and over on a daily basis that this person that just did crime A was arrested for crime B earlier that day or the day before or the week before that. And it's like, wait a minute, why wasn't that person in jail? Why wasn't that person being held accountable? Well, it's because they're trying to reduce the numbers systemically, right? We're talking about
systemically. Systemically. They're changing the numbers systemically. Gotcha. I get it. Although stealing from the stores in masses aren't being recorded. Okay, where is this? Where's the evidence for this? I want to go look it up. Tell me where this is happening.
Systemic things. The Democrats like to talk about systemic this or that. Well, systemically, they're trying to reduce the number of crime by not holding people accountable. And when you have lighter punishments for such crimes, people are more inclined to do them. FAFO. Everybody knows that. And when people
Again, that means the crime's going up, homie. The crime rate is going up then, not down. That doesn't, I knew this.
And then they realize that
This is what I'm talking about. You can be this stupid on the right and have 22,000 subscribers and get 117,000 views on this and probably a billion comments just giving you praise on, oh, you got him, you owned Dave. You really got Dave there.
find out part wasn't so bad, they FA again and again and again until finally, eventually, somebody is truly a victim. And in a lot of cases, it ends up with an innocent victim losing their life or something like that along those lines, a truly violent crime from a person that should have been locked up and prosecuted and held accountable way, way ahead of time, especially as it relates to illegal immigration coming into our country. And I know the progressives, the Democrats, all these people want to say, oh, but the crime rate from illegal immigrants is less than the crime.
His logic would be, well, yeah, there's more crime, but it's not being prosecuted, so on paper. Exactly. Like, yes, he would have to say, well, crime rates are going up, but we're not prosecuting them. But that's not what he's saying, because crime rates have been going down. So yeah, it's just, it doesn't, nothing he's saying actually makes any sense.
Crime rate percentage-wise from people that are actually American citizens, well, that doesn't matter to me. What matters is the total amount of crime and the fact that these people aren't being held accountable because they're not being prosecuted and held accountable. And in my opinion, when you add more people, that adds to the total pool of crime being committed. I don't care if their percentage is lower or higher or any, really. It needs to be zero. And we need to reduce the amount of crime that's going on within our own citizens, but not by prosecuting less and letting people get away with more. That's not how you truly reduce crime. That's
Talk about unfair, funny how much traffic you can get when Russia wants to boost your bullshit. I mean, dude, Tenet didn't get views at all. The only show that was even getting over like 100,000 views on their entire channel was Tim Pool's Culture War show, which I'm pretty sure on Tim Pool's channel got like 1 million views each, but on Tenet, it barely cracked 100,000, if that. It was wild.
That's not how you protect the innocent citizens of our country. And then at the same time, on the other hand, you have people who are being over-prosecuted and, being held accountable for things that they did when they were, defending innocent folks. Like the guy in New York who accidentally killed the dude that was attacking a woman. He was just defending the woman, the innocent woman who was under attack from the man, and he ended up accidentally choking him for too long or whatever the case was, right? And so then that guy's held accountable for murder and all this other stuff, and really he was just acting in self-defense for a person who couldn't do it themselves. And then that's the person that gets prosecuted and jailed and countless news articles written about and things like that. So I don't know. When the whole justice system is completely out of whack and these prosecutors are looking at skin color rather than the crime, looking at ethnicity, looking at, country of origin over the crime that's being committed, you realize that the example that David Pakman just used right there, that as people stop going to church, crime is coincidentally going down, that is completely absurd. That notion is completely out of line, and anybody with anybody with two brain cells to rub together realizes that the more people that are serving God, the more people that are going to church regularly.
Oh, so he just dismisses it out of hand. Oh, he's dismissing it out of hand. No, that's impossible. That's impossible. You can't have less people going to church and crime rates going down. You can't do it. It's literally impossible. There's no way. Everybody with brain cells knows that you can't do it.
The more people that are implementing the values that a good church instills into a community, the better off and the safer that community is. So David Pakman's an idiot. Dr. Phil, you could tell by the end, was completely ready to go to sleep. He realized about halfway through that this is not the interview that he should be spending his time on, but he went ahead because he has integrity and finished it out. But if you're watching closely, it appears that Dr. Phil is about ready to go to sleep. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Wait, that was really cool.
Make sure to hit that like. With that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share.
Did you guys see that? So when he says subscribe to the channel, the subscribe button lights up. Did you see that?
If you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this video.
Is mine doing it? Subscribe. Oh, I thought you were trying to say Mike. I thought you were trying to say Mike. I was like, oh, is it fucking? Is it saying it? Subscribe, 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 subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Is it doing it? Is mine doing it?